Hey guys, welcome to R-Rated Christianity. Those of you that join us on a regular basis, this is well, thank you. Those that don't, welcome. It's an apologetics podcast. It comes from the Greek word apologia, to give an answer, a defense for why you believe what you believe. And so we were laughing before we got in. And I think I just did the whole show in 2 seconds. I said I was just going over what we were going to talk about tonight. Jesus does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war, but rejects them. Pope Leo. And I said, Jesus listens to everybody's prayers, you know? And then we started laughing. Whether he answers them or not, it's another story. And you can actually distance yourself and turn God's ear off to you about prayer. Scripture is clear about that in 1 Peter 3 for sure, and I can talk about that. But I'm going to act as the ignorant interviewer a little bit because I'm going to press in a little bit. I want to ask questions about this. There's a lot of people that are throwing theological ideas around.
Excuse me, nothing against Leo, but I can't hear you because Salo has the disco music way up.
Oh, really?
So while I can hear myself, thanks, Salo.
Maybe he thinks you're a disco dude, maybe. I don't know.
Appreciate, maybe it's not disco. I guess it's elevator music. Still hear it in my earpiece.
It's on ours.
Yeah, I can hear it. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. It was all very jingly.
Yeah.
All right. Please. Sorry to interrupt you.
So let's just talk about this. When I think about God not hearing, I mean, he listens. He just doesn't always respond. Whenever you and I talk about marriage, and we get into Ephesians 5, and it talks about women, submit to your husbands, and after people have a hissy fit about that, and then you describe what that biblically means and how it's actually beautiful.
Yeah.
And that whole marriage and relationship is beautiful. Hold on, and actually beautiful. Then you go to 1 Peter 3, and it warns husbands, and this is why, as the leader of a home and the headship of a home, it's servant leadership. God expects us to treat our wives a certain way, and he holds us accountable. In 1 Peter 3, It talks about if you don't treat your wife the way I told you to in Ephesians 5, which is what? Love your wife like Christ loved the church. And so what does that mean? You serve, sacrifice, and you die for her. So the submission to you, and submission, as you and I have taught and talked about before, when you break down the root word, just means to support the mission. If somebody submits to a lawyer, you support the mission of the lawyer representing you. You submit to a doctor, you support the mission of the doctor getting you better, or treating you. Whatever it is, fill in the blanks. So that's all it means. It's not a domination statement. It's a support the mission. You support what they're trying to accomplish. So if the wife supports the mission of the husband, what's that? The mission of the husband is to love the wife the way Christ loved the church. So it's actually beautiful. But I didn't mean to get into that. I just wanted to make sure I gave context to that. But then in 1 Peter 3, it says, hey, if you don't love her the way I tell you to love her, I'm not even going to hear your prayers. So God mutes you. I mean, the idea of God muting me when I need him, I mean, I always need him. But the idea of God muting me to him.
Yeah.
Like, Charlie Brown, exactly.
Talk to the hand.
Yeah, to the heavenly hand. I mean, that should scare the shit out of people.
Yeah.
I mean, at least if you believe the scriptures and you have a relationship with Christ and you want him to talk with you and walk with you through life. And so it's a high bar, meaning, okay, you have authority, but there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. And then so that's where I've seen in scripture where God doesn't hear somebody. It's purposeful, it's conditional. And we can break down hermeneutically what it means. And you may say obviously he can hear everything. So it's not that he can't hear you, but meaning he's not going to respond to you. You're going to be muted out. So now people that wage war, you know where he's going with this. It's a political statement.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with the Pope making a political statement as long as it's biblical. Make all the political statements you want. And this applies to anybody, pastor, pope, bishop. I don't give a crap what title you want to give yourself. Disciple, prophet, prophetess, whatever the hell. But as long as if you're a Christ follower and you claim the banner of a Christian, then your political statement needs to be biblical. God bless you.
Yeah.
Did you sneeze?
Go figure.
Oh, did you? Then it needs.
God bless you anyway.
Yeah, you need it. But it needs to be biblical. And so, as we've talked about here before, we think more pastors, more churches, and even the Pope need to be more political. I think that was horrible advice. I don't know why we fell for it as a church in general, the body of Christ, the bride, fell for don't mix politics and religion. You can't help it. It's all talking about worldview. And then politics, the definition we use, which is biblical, a set of ideas advocated by a group of people to affect the lives of others. That's
Yes.
all. That's all politics means. Because we're dumbasses in the United States, we're obsessed with Republican, Democrat. When politics just means a set of ideas advocated by people to affect others' lives, and that's Matthew 28:19, the Great Commission: go into all nations, making disciples of all men, teaching them to obey. That's a political statement. It's not a partisan statement. It's a political statement. So I don't mind him making a political statement. I just want it to be biblical. And so what I want to press into you today is to talk about, and I'm going to ask questions. I have no idea what you're going to say. I don't, because we haven't talked about this. And I want it to be raw. Is if whether this is accurate or not, and if not, why? And I'll push back. I wanted to start with Ephesians 5 and 1 Peter 3 because I wanted to tie in. That's where I know where God says, I'm not going to hear you if you don't love your wife the way I say you're supposed to love her. But is this biblical? Don't look at his hat. I'm just saying, George, you get distracted too easy. I need you to focus.
No, I was focused on the jammies. But
okay.
No, of course it's not biblical.
Okay, why?
Of course it's not. So I want to get back to some of the things that you said. It's not it's not biblical because I'm going to read it. Jesus does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war. First of all, God hears everything.
Right. Yeah.
Everything.
Right,
So from a theological perspective, that's incompatible with what the Scripture teaches. I mean, Psalm 139, verses 1 through 4, literally hears everything from everyone.
Right.
The question really becomes twofold. One, does he answer the requests of man, which we call prayer, which is more than just requests. It's communicating with God if you're in a relationship with him. Or if you're not, you might just pray. God's under no obligation, by the way, to answer anyone who's not in relationship with him. So that's really the question. Does he answer every prayer? And the answer is of course he does not answer every prayer. He certainly doesn't answer it in the affirmative.
Well, I was going to say, I think God answers every prayer. No is an answer. And it's a full sentence. No. There's no, period. And so if that's why, and I love that you added in the affirmative
Sure.
at the end, but go ahead.
Yeah. So we're saying the same thing differently.
Right.
But yeah, I think that there are people who would say, well, not really. He doesn't answer. I mean, he may just, is silence a response? I think if the umbrella is that wide, then yes, he does answer every prayer, but he certainly doesn't answer in the affirmative. God is under no obligation to do what I want him to do. And this is where it comes down to then, okay, well, what prayers does he answer? And you laid a pretty good example out. But it really comes down to essentially two thoughts. And James, God does not answer any prayer that does not line up with his will. Number one, that's 1 John chapter 5, verses 14 to 15. Okay. I think that's worth reading if you don't have it handy. But it basically says, this is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything in accordance with his will, that he hears us. Okay. So God is aligned. His sovereignty, his sovereign will is aligned, obviously, with our prayers, if in fact they align with his. So when we read, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. That doesn't mean just be happy. The word delight doesn't mean just be happy or be content. It means that you're literally aligned in your thinking and your priorities with God's thinking and priorities. And obviously, he's going to give us everything that we want if our desires line up with his. Right. The other question is the timing. We want everything today. So he may decide, yeah, I'm going to give you exactly what you want, but because it happens to line up with my will, right. But I'm not going to give it to you now because you're not ready or whatever. Or because someone else isn't ready, because we don't work in a vacuum. Everything I do affects my neighbor. Everything. Right. We're all very interconnected here. We don't realize it sometimes ever, or even until years later. Right. So whenever God doesn't answer your prayer, you may have to be okay with the fact, or maybe he answers your prayer because it lines up with his will, but you may have to be okay with the fact that it isn't going to be today. It may not be for a while because he has the lives of other people in mind that will benefit, or maybe not, from what you do as a result of him answering your prayer. So that's the second thing. And I guess the lastly is, because he's talking about war, does God answer the prayers of people in battle? And I think that's really where this goes down to. And what he's trying to do is, to your point,
wage war. What does he mean by wage war? It sounds like I think he's going to initiate war. Yeah, he's talking about bullying or the aggressor.
Well, from a Catholic perspective, from a historical Catholic perspective, it seems to me the governing tradition of whether or not one enters a military conflict is predominantly known as just war theory, or just war tradition. Okay. The theory is here are some really great concepts for whether or not and there's a beginning, a middle, and end. So just war theory determines, it goes back to the time of Augustine, like 1,500 years ago. But it basically says, is it just to enter a war? In other words, the decision-making leading up to entering a conflict, is that just, number one? Number two, when you are in a war, is it conducted justly? And there's principles behind that.
What are the principles behind that?
Well,
From entering a war to justly conducting. I mean, look, there's no nice way to fight. It's like saying, are you conducting yourself justly in a boxing match? You're trying to knock each other out. I mean, yeah, you can't kick, so there's some rules. But a war is a war. You're trying to win. I mean, you're trying to kill or be killed, right?
Well, I think those are the principles. If you pull up Just War Theory, and there are volumes dedicated to this. There's a book that I think everybody should read on. It's America's Just War Tradition, and it's written from two different philosophical perspectives, two different scholars. Mark David Hall is the chief scholar there, and I think everybody should get that. And it gets into the weeds of what you're talking about. This isn't like a 5-minute discussion, but it gets into the considerations. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. Every conflict is analyzed for its circumstances. But generally speaking, it analyzes whether it's just to enter a war, whether the decision-making process is just to entering a war. When you're in a war, whether it's conducted justly, and then the outcome of the war and the aftermath, is it managed justly? That tradition is fundamentally born out of traditional Catholicism. So he knows this. And by that standard, I think it would be very difficult for him to look at his own tradition, which the Vatican still supports and endorses.
What is it?
It would be very bizarre to look at just war tradition, which looks at basically the moral implications of a political decision. And it's at odds with what he's saying, because you look at, it's very neighbor-oriented. You are protecting the innocent. And so can you analyze this war primarily through that lens? You've got evil that is being sort of promulgated across the world. That is demonstrative in terms of the history of Iran, not just in the region, but beyond. You've heard it said a million times, the world's #1 state sponsored of terror. Yeah. So that's
uncontroverted, I think.
It is uncontroverted. And so we
should be, at least.
And it's not just in terms of the violent displacement of people. And it's not just Israel, but it's the region. But it's also, as it pertains to America, I mean, we've got thousands of Americans that are dead as a result or maimed as a result of those campaigns in the last 47 years. We have financial transactions without question, that have funded those initiatives as it pertains to Iran. So we know this to be true about Iran. We know that it's evil, and we know that it's apocalyptic in nature. It's run by a bunch of apocalyptic mullahs who believe that more mayhem, when time we talk about the apocalypse, we're talking about the end of the world, ushering it in by either waiting for or trying to speed up certain events that make it a certainty. And so can you imagine for a moment these individuals, and this is why this is an issue, can you imagine the individuals, a mullah-run regime, a radical Shia Islamic regime in Iran, truly having the ability to deploy a nuclear warhead?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they are indiscriminately right now bombing their own neighbors, many of whom are Muslim themselves, if not all, to create pain so that they divest themselves of any support of the allies. That's the Iranian thinking. They have indiscriminately funded Hezbollah, which we now are texting about today.
Yeah.
And this has been going on in Lebanon, for instance. This is why Israel is in Lebanon. For like the 5th time, this is the 5th time that they are in Lebanon, because if you know the geography, particularly southern Lebanon, you have a cultic Islamo-fascist Hezbollah, which is Shiite, which has been launching missiles for decades into into Tel Aviv. Most recently, you asked why are they bombing them now? Into Galilee, while people are having a Seder meal. Okay, there's a barrage of missiles. And so they had already announced that they were going to launch a ground campaign because they've been launching missiles pretty routinely. And Israel said, enough.
Recently?
Yes, absolutely. It just happened last Wednesday. So, and this has been going on for 50 years. That's demonstrative. I'm giving you one example because Iran's behind that, which is also behind the attack on Americans for the last 5 decades. And so we're in this war for a reason. This should have been dealt with, and that's a political discussion, I get it. the geopolitical discussion. It should have been dealt with a long time ago. This is passed on, and sort of football's been punted from president to president. Trump's inherited a mess. Whether it's Israeli intelligence or American intelligence or European intelligence or British intelligence, we have corroboration that the proximity to the development of fully enriched uranium, which leads to a fully enriched nuclear warhead that can be deployed, that it's not like years and years and years from now. And so we believe that this was imminent. You can argue that it wasn't. I think it was imminent a long time ago.
So I want to make sure the audience understands this. So you're giving an apologetic. You're defending America's role in this war.
I'm doing two things at the same time. There's a political aspect and there's a moral aspect.
No, I know, but you're making the political argument because that influences his opinion. I'm just making sure it's clear.
Well, just war theory
people may think this
provides
is
a moral
Saturday morning.
No, I think you're bringing up an important point. I'll define this and I'll shut up.
No, you don't have to
The
shut
just war tradition is precisely what you just said. It is to really sort of do this kind of handshake between political imperatives and moral justification. Because not every war is just like not every cause is just. And so there's an analysis behind that. And so protecting the innocent, stopping evil, and that's obviously, well, maybe it's not obvious, but it should be for people who are listening. Just war tradition concerns itself with stopping evil and the destruction of the innocent and the creation of mayhem. And really sort of when it gets to the point where you've got massacre of human lives that are beyond the nation. I just want to be clear. Iranian destruction of people is not limited to the tens and tens and tens of thousands of their own civilians, which is well documented. Most recently, I know the number varies, 32,000 to 40,000 people that it killed in January. It's not limited to that. It's outside its own region. Killing of people, citizens in multiple countries, including the United States, not just Israel. Israel's been the big brunt. But, okay, when is enough enough? That's the issue here. When's enough enough? And by his own tradition, this is a just conflict. That's the political aspect of it. Now, the notion that Jesus doesn't listen to the prayers of those who wage war, that's really, really interesting because God isn't just described as a righteous God. He is a just God. And in multiple examples throughout the Old Testament, in multiple examples, he refers to himself as a warrior God. At the end of the age, Jesus is going to come as a warrior king. That is a really weird image for a God who is sort of mutually exclusive to any notions of war or being a warrior. And so it raises the question, under what conditions would God be okay with being in a war versus not being okay with one?
So what would you say if you had an opportunity to sit down with the Pope, say Pope Leo? What are you doing over here, guy? What would you tell him? What would you, if you had an opportunity to talk to him about this statement? Just pretend like I'm him without the hat.
Well, he's speaking for Jesus, so I would ask him to ground that in the scripture.
What do you think he would do to try to substantiate that?
Well, I think what people do is they do a fallback position to Matthew 5, which hits home because we're actually talking about that in the Gospel of Matthew. And really, and I think the
you're talking about turning the other cheek?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to give context to the audience, so we're in the Sermon on the Mount in the men's Bible study, Matthew 5.
You were in 33 through 37 today.
We're going to go to 48, but we didn't get that far because we stopped in 33, 37. And so we're talking about, God, Jesus' prescription on how to deal with others. The Bible talks about our relationship with God, being right with God, but then also how do we treat others? Because we're Christians, right? We're wearing a banner. We're saying we belong to that dude, Christ, and we want to be like him. We're trying to emulate him. We're pursuing him, and so we should reflect his principles. And so Jesus is giving direction, especially in this section of the Sermon on the Mount, of how to treat people horizontally, right? Vertical's up, horizontal's aside. Horizontally, meaning the people that you live with. And one of them talked about an oath. Then we talked about truth and why you should keep your word and why that's important. We broke that down today. And then we talked about, revenge and what this really means, and eye for an eye, and turn the other cheek and what that means. And so and that's what you're referencing here. You think that he's going to go to Matthew 5,
33 to 37.
and talk about turning the other cheek. So then if you think he's going to do that, then explain it the way we were talking about it today. Because I mean, I was talking about it in detail. You chimed in as well, which was excellent.
Yeah.
So explain what it means hermeneutically, meaning translationally, because we got to understand the writer's intent, the audience, and the way they spoke. Because
In the
remember,
Greco-Roman society, the notion of turning the other cheek and the idea of getting slapped in the face with the right hand versus the left hand, these things have particular meaning. And in that society, the hearer would have understood that in the context of an interpersonal relationship. In other words, a personal insult within an interpersonal relationship. That's the context that Jesus is addressing. He is not projecting or extrapolating beyond that to civic policy or certainly not military policy or governmental policy. That's the context. And what he is essentially saying, and you heard me say this morning, is that the essence of what Jesus is saying is don't get into the mud with the aggressor. Okay?
Right.
The notion of returning evil for evil, he uses, and you remember that, he's quoting, and you mentioned this, I think in Exodus 21.
Exodus 20.
In Exodus 21, I think also in Leviticus 24, and perhaps even Deuteronomy 19 and 20.
It was Deuteronomy that I mentioned today.
And so what's he doing? He's saying that traditionally you have heard this retributively.
Yeah.
Now, he knew that in that culture it wasn't being used retributively. And by that I mean that the punishment wasn't fitting the crime. Somebody was hurting your feelings or they were offending you in some way, and then you would like overreact and crush that person.
And we have
right?
we have that in the justice system called proportionality.
Right. Well, that proportionality had been lost over time.
Right.
And the Pharisaic order had really sort of twisted the law into a pretzel, and it had that proportionate sort of dealing with offenses had approach to dealing with offenses had been lost, where people were sort of overreacting. That's one issue. The second issue is Jesus says you need to even go beyond like for like. You got to go beyond this notion of proportionality. Go beyond that. Go an extra mile. Go the extra mile. What's he saying? What he's saying is it may be appropriate to not do anything at times. If somebody is insulting you, it might be appropriate, Nico, to just let them knock themselves out.
Right.
Don't do anything. Don't get down in the gutter with your aggressor. It may be appropriate to not do anything. In fact, you may even go a step further. Kill them with kindness, so to speak. Maybe do something that extends love for them. Because what's the ultimate hope? That you would bring them to a saving understanding and knowledge of Jesus Christ. So that's the essence of what he's talking about in a particular relationship. And what a lot of individuals like Pope Leo would do would be to extrapolate that into context of military conflicts, which is completely out of context. And just
so back to my hypothetical. So you sit down with the Pope, you ask him, would you call him Your Majesty, Your Highness? What would you say? Pope? Leo? Whatever you call him. I mean, I'm not being, I don't know what you call the Pope anymore, but say you Pope Leo or,
Your Eminence.
Is it Your Eminence? Is that what it is?
I think
is that
it
the
is.
proper?
I think it's
is
Your
that,
Eminence.
Is that what you tell him? Is it? He's not a father. Don't do that.
Yeah.
He's the Pope guy. What's the matter with you? You don't say sir. Man, so look at this guy. Is that it?
Yeah.
Then he's gonna
I
send you.
guess dude's out of the question, but
Fair
enough. Yeah.
So you talk to him, you say, how can you justify this statement biblically? Then you think he would go to Matthew 5:33-37, and then you would lovingly give the correction you gave and explain to say you should say, but this is my understanding of the scripture and how it's written in the context and the hermeneutics of it and the linguistics of it and the culture and what their phrases were and how they wrote and their writing style and the audience was this. You would go into that kind of detail with him.
Sure.
And then tell him he's wrong.
And then, I guess I would.
See how he is?
I would
and
ask
then you
him,
take the hat and run off and then be the new Pope.
I would tell him also, and I would ask him to explain clear context in the Old Testament. And then in the New Testament, I would go to Romans 13, verses 1-7. But in the Old Testament, I would ask him to explain how God is framed in warlike terms. I mean, the children of Israel had been relieved from, or have been delivered from bondage in in Egypt, and then literally they had literally defeated Pharaoh's army. And then you flip over to Exodus 15, and Moses characterizes God, and he says, "The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is His name." That's an interesting statement to say to a God who rejects war under circumstances. So God can engage in it, but I can't. That's interesting because then it puts at odds Romans chapter 13, which says that governmental authorities are instituted by the hand of God. They're situated there by God. Even if you think a governmental authority, I didn't agree with Biden's policies, for instance, politically, right? I happen to believe that his was perhaps one of the most corrupt governments that the United States has ever had to stomach. Nevertheless, I'm called to pray for my president. And I'm called to pray. And I remember you said in my men's Bible study, we used to pray for the president, pray for the cabinet members, anyone affiliated with the government, that God would bless them indeed. And in fact, I wanted God to bless Joe Biden. I pray for blessing all the time because I know if God's hands of blessing is on him, then we're better off. So,
But if you lived in California, would you pray for Newsom?
I know it's a tough one to swallow.
Lying, now you're
but we're
lying.
called to pray for anyone in authority because we recognize that they're there by God's hand and that they have the power to wield the sword. Yeah, that's right. For whatever just means. Now, what's the principle there? Now, Paul wrote this when Nero was in power, and Nero was a masochistic
Piece of shit.
You can fill that in.
Anyways, terrible.
I mean, dude was a psycho, and by every bit of evidence that we have historically, we know that Paul ultimately met his demise under Nero. Nero was, I think, in power from 54 to 68 AD. Paul died around 66, 68, about 4 years or so after the Great Fire of Rome, where many Christians were slaughtered. And so Paul's writing this knowing that he's talking about Nero. And what's the message in Romans 13, 1-7 is that you ought to honor them, pray for Nero, pray for people. That's an interesting statement because they wield the sword.
But what if Nero was, but I think this statement is going to the hypothetical if Nero was praying. Right? I mean, this doesn't apply to the people praying for Nero. This applies to Jesus. Look, this is a slight on Trump, right? And America. And Israel, probably. What do you think, Salo? Now you're Catholic. All right. So Jesus did not listen to the prayers of those who wage war. So waging war, my perception of this statement is he's talking about people that initiate war. You're waging war. You can wage a war campaign even though you're not the one that started it. So I understand. That's the way I think he's using it. Do you agree? That you're waging, provoking, starting, whatever war, but rejects them. So there's an idea of God rejecting. Number one, it's an indictment to the initiation of this war.
Yes.
And it's speaking for God, like you said, that he not only is not going to listen to you, but he's going to reject you.
So we've already established that it's an interpersonal framing in Matthew 5. Nowhere in any letter in the New Testament by any of the New Testament writers do we see any indictment whatsoever, even calling into question at all. And they were under the boot of
Calling
Rome.
what question? Into what question?
They were. It was never a question whether individuals who were enlisted in the army or operating in a military capacity. It was never a question on whether that should be called out as being somehow necessarily immoral. And they were involved in battles every day. They were involved in military excursions all day long. We don't see a single repudiation of a person in the army, of any leader in the army, and the notion that there weren't Christians who were become.
Yeah, I don't think he's making a statement against war in general. I think he's making a statement against initiating an unjust war.
No, I don't think so, bud. I mean,
so you think
I would just
hold on. Let me ask
please,
you.
yes.
You think this is a pacifistic statement?
Yes, I do. I mean, those who wage war,
See,
it's not just the guy who's starting the war, or to your point, because I think I know what you're saying.
I think it's
Those
directed
who
to
wage
Trump.
war. If you've got a platoon out in the field, you've got a captain, you've got a commander, those people are waging war. In fact, they're making everyday decisions that the commander-in-chief has no idea about. They're actually making those calls, much like...
Yeah, but the initiation, if it's an initiated just war, then all that would be covered under just war theory. Unless individually, look, I get it.
Well, now you're
There's
making my
people-
argument.
I
agree.
There's people within the war that could act against,
Of course.
Obviously moral decisions and
course.
killing innocent. And the issue is killing innocent people.
But-
I really think,
Right.
I don't remember when this statement was, but I think this is a statement. Was this statement made after or before Trump did that tweet or whatever that was, the Truth Social, of saying that everybody's going to die, the civilization like they know it? I'm trying to get that damn statement.
Okay. I knew when I read it, it was a giant nothing burger because once again, they quote him saying that, but they don't quote everything he stated before of what he was going to do.
No,
So
I know
we
that.
knew-
I'm just talking. I'm trying. Look, I'm not here to defend or attack Trump. I mean, I think it was bullshit criticism, to be honest with you.
but I wanted to get to the innocent civilian stuff that you were talking about.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We're talking about this dude and his statement. I think it's related to that, and then we'll get back to the statement. That's what I think. I don't perceive this as he's making this general statement of pacifism. Like there's no need. You can never have war. You can never defend yourself. You have to turn the other cheek. I mean, I don't think that. That's why I was asking, when did this come out versus when Trump's statements
You're going to
came
be
out?
morally responsible. If what he's saying is true, you're going to be morally responsible as a captain of a platoon.
Right.
And you're making those decisions that ultimately lead to the life or death of individuals. I mean, this is kind of like the argument in the Third Reich in World War II. You had a number of SS guards who said, hey, man, don't look at me. I'm just following orders.
Right.
And a lot of them were found guilty because, in fact, it was their call on how were they implementing the grotesque final solution to the Jewish question. Ultimately, they were held responsible. Now, many weren't because they didn't know. I mean, after investigations in the leading up to the Nuremberg trials in 1948, but many of them were, and certainly the higher levels were. And I'm talking about commanders and colonels and so forth. The reality is this. You can't make a statement like that and necessarily isolate it to the commander-in-chief. Now, he may have the commander-in-chief in mind.
Sure.
But there's no way that can just be confined to that because at the end of the day, the war is waged by the decisions of people that are made on the ground at a level much lower than Donald J. Trump. So the question is, does Donald J. Trump have a right as the head of the government? Well, yeah, he does. Romans 13, 1-7 puts the power of the sword in the hand.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the use of the sword is justified. I'm not attacking Trump.
And
I'm
this
just
is
saying
where
in general.
just war tradition comes
Right,
in.
but what I'm saying, but I think someone that listens to you say that may misinterpret what you're saying. And if it's what you're saying, then just say this is what you're saying.
Okay.
Saying that Romans 13 says that whoever's in charge can do whatever the hell they want.
No, it's just a foundational statement that they have a right to do that. It doesn't necessarily
hold on.
mean that they
What
wage
gives them
war in
the
a
right?
just way. I got it. It doesn't mean that the cause is just. It doesn't mean that the war is just.
Okay.
All I was trying to say is the tradition that actually comes out of Roman Catholicism, a patristic, at least by the time of Augustine, establishes the parameters by which one determines that a war is just. I've read Just War Theory. I've studied it. I've been tested on it. I get it. And I'm telling you right now, there is nothing about this war that is inconsistent with his own tradition. And so, yes, what would you say to him? We would engage in a discussion about just war.
Got it.
And then we would invariably get to the stuff that you always talk about, which is, well, let's go back and look at the history of it. Because it didn't happen in 5 minutes, right? Then you said, when is it imminent?
Yeah.
So this started in 1979. It's just now imminent? Because we argue it's been imminent for a long time. Whether or not we did something about it is a different discussion, And I think we've led to this. We've come to
Well,
this.
I think there's
point.
two issues. There's number one, is this theologically accurate? Meaning, does God not listen to the prayers of those who wage war? We have to define what wage means. Does it mean anybody engaging in war or anybody initiating war and provoking war, as Salo said, but rejects them? And does God can't, like, if Nero prayed to God, to Yahweh, as he was doing those atrocities to Christians, God would hear him because he's sovereign.
Exactly.
But he would not answer him the way he wanted to.
Correct.
Matter of fact, he could rebuke him, correct him, destroy him, kill him. He could do whatever he wants. But so when he says but rejects them, maybe what they're doing. I'm not.
I don't want to open up a can of worms.
Uh-oh.
It's not that he's going to answer the question or answer Nero's prayer because Nero's praying it, but the outcome may look like he's answering Nero's prayer because it suits his overall plan. God allows.
Yeah,
just to be clear,
I'm with you.
Just to be clear,
Like how could this happen?
because-
How does God allow such evil? Look what happened
Thank
in
you.
my family's life. And say, well, God allows it obviously because He's sovereign. Now, did He
Right.
choose for it to happen? But He allowed it. We can get into the discussion
Because it
apologetic-
quickly goes
Well,
there.
if you allow something and you chose for it to happen because you could have stopped it, you had the power to stop it. Whatever. I'm just saying He gave people free agency. They make choices. He allows it, and He has an ultimate plan with it. That's Romans 8:28, and it's also Old Testament writing as well.
What Salo doesn't shows here is that he also said that
Who, the
Jesus,
Pope?
right? What Salo didn't, because it would have been a paragraph, and Salo doesn't like paragraphs. No, is that Jesus rejects war.
Oh, that's what he said?
Yeah.
Oh, that's why you took
That's
that
the-
position.
that-
Okay, I didn't know that. What did he say?
So-
Well, read the whole thing.
He stated in part that Jesus rejects war and does not listen to the prayers of those who wage it.
Okay.
That's the full thought. I mean, he said
So-
more
so-
than that.
so
This was
if Jesus
this was a
rejects
Palm
war-
Sunday homily, so he said more
If
than that.
Jesus rejects war, let's play that out. If Jesus rejects war, then that means he rejects all violence, right?
Right. I
He
mean,
rejects war at all costs. I mean, it's like no matter what. If someone, I reject violence. It's pacifism. Then I mean, you reject violence at all
you
costs.
can't get there unless you extrapolate from Matthew 5:33 to 36.
But what I'm saying,
Right.
is that his
Yes.
position? If Jesus rejects war, does the next question I would have if I was in the same room with you and him is, does Jesus reject all violence? And if he does, that's contradictory to Holy Monday and the turning of the tables with the
right.
money changers.
That's where this
because
goes.
Jesus is obviously violent in those situations. It's
where this
righteous
goes.
anger. And Ecclesiastes 3 says there's a time for everything under the sun, including a time to what? Kill. That's in Ecclesiastes 3. Jesus didn't come to replace that. He came to fulfill it. And so that's still in place. That's still a moral. Now, you pair that with Proverbs 6:16. God hates, and we read this today in Bible study, God hates the spilling of what blood? Innocent blood, not blood. Because then Joshua's screwed because God gave him clear commands to go finish off these kings. I mean, the Canaanites, the people that took out the Canaanites, and everyone was taken out. I mean, so God's not against justifiable defense, war, killing, dare I say that. He's against murder. Murder is defined as Proverbs 6:16, the innocent blood, the spilling of innocent blood, which includes abortion, by the way.
And it's actually with malice.
which one? All murder.
The particular word of thou shalt not kill. Well, I'm just saying, if you look at the definition of the word kill, I'm emphasizing what you're saying. I'm just simply augmenting it and saying it's the deliberate sort of premeditating of someone's life with malice.
Well,
And you're saying it's redundant because, of course, it's malicious.
I don't know how you nicely kill somebody, but what I'm saying is it's whether it's justified or not.
Yeah.
That's the difference. I mean, so a homicide could be justified.
Yeah.
And that means it's self-defense or appropriate use, legal use of deadly force for yourself and self-defense or defense of a third person.
Yes.
And so that's still a homicide. It's an unnatural death. That's what homicide essentially means. So it doesn't mean murder. Homicide doesn't mean murder. That's not legally defined as murder. So God's not against homicide. He's against murder. If you look at Proverbs 6:16 and Ecclesiastes 3, I mean, it's a fact, right? I mean, so I didn't realize that was the rest of his statement.
Yeah.
So now I know why you were saying that it's more of a general statement of pacifism than it is. I mean, it's probably applied.
And I'm not saying I'm
probably
not,
a
and
slight
I'm not all
also.
discounting. I'm not naive. I'm not all discounting that this is meant as a hit on Trump. I'm not, because I mean he's divested himself of Trump policy before, and he's not been particularly silent about it.
Look,
I think in many ways,
look, I think we need to analyze that, and we have some time. We should analyze it. There's the Christian out there that thinks that Trump walks on water, and only one person walked on water. It was Christ, and he's not Messiah. And Paula White is an idiot. I don't know why she's his spiritual advisor, but she's ridiculous. I mean, she just is. I mean, she's not a pastor. She's a heretic because she says, and I'm just going to. I mean, it is true, and he's foolish to have her in that position. But oh well, he does. I mean, no one said he's some pastor analyst that he knows what the hell he's doing when it comes to that. Because he's really, if he has any, he has faith. I don't know if he's saved. I don't think he's saved. I have not seen evidence of that. He has said things during Easter statements and Christmas statements, but I don't know. That's between him and the Lord. I hope he is. I want everyone to be saved, including Biden and Harris and everybody. I want everybody to know the Lord and know the Lord Jesus Christ so they can go to heaven. Everybody. But the Christian, really, we see this split on this support, and that's a whole show. I probably shouldn't have ruined it. This needs to be a whole show with Momo here and Marquise and all of us just jawing it up. But on how the Christian views Trump, and that maybe needs to be its own show. Saulo, what do you think? How should the Christian view Trump? Because I have very specific. I mean, you know me. I'm pretty objective. I think I am.
It has to happen every week.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, look, but I mean,
every tweet.
to me, I think it's pretty simple. It's just not easy. I think it's pretty simple, and the reason why people, even on our other show on Sidebar, I'm always criticizing Trump. I'm criticizing behavior. I'm not even criticizing him per se. I'm going to analyze behavior. I'm going to judge a tree the way Christ told me to by its fruit, and so I'm going to analyze everyone's behavior, including my own, against the backdrop of the scriptures. and of God's word
Sure.
and of Christ Jesus, my Savior,
As every Christian is called to do.
as we're supposed to. So I'm going to say, okay, that's not biblical. I mean, you're human, so okay, check, me too. I mean, I don't do everything that's biblical, or I'll massage it a little bit because I'm human and flesh. But that's what we should do. But I just think it's fascinating how Christians, you have this divide. You have some Christians that are just think he's the Antichrist, and others think he walks between the raindrops. And I'm in neither camp, right? I mean,
But I think you gotta simplify it down. I thought you were going to go down that path.
well, I didn't want to ruin the next show. If
Well,
that's going to be what do you talk about? What path?
Because regardless of how you look at Trump, what he's doing is this is an affront to the destruction of innocent lives, and that's inarguable. You have
the
a
question has to
force.
be asked: do you destroy innocent life to save innocent life?
Well, the objective is not to destroy.
The indictment. Sorry, I just got to make it's out there, and I got to make sure that we understand, because the indictment is that Israel is waging a war for its own purpose and is killing innocent people in Iran. They already made the argument in Gaza. I have an opinion about that, and now Lebanon. And so, so you have this indictment out there that's what they're doing.
This has been the question in every military conflict since at least just war and before. This is always the issue. Always. First of all, a person who is launching a military campaign morally has an obligation first and foremost to the individuals under his care. And yes, the reality is that is trumped. That is not trumped. No pun intended. By the enemy and by the population at large.
Well,
So
but
if
I
that
think
mean-
there's two scenarios here, because I've had this scenario. Look, I think Iran is evil. The ideology, not the people, not all the people. Only like 20%, or was it 81% of the don't support the leadership in Iran, right? And they're like, please don't stop, save us from these evil bastards. Okay, but 20% support them roughly. It's like 81 and change or whatever it is, but whatever the numbers are, and so I think it's clear that the ideology running Iran is evil. Like you said, 47 years. Thousands of lives, but American life, and people maimed and injured, forever changed, but also killed. And they're co-conspirators in that because they have funded it. They've been the leading sponsor of terror, and we know that shouldn't be argued. But that's true. So they've needed to be dealt with for a long time.
Right.
Now, the scenario that I think is clear, and I think that people are, if you have somebody that walks into a kindergarten room and holds them hostage at gunpoint and says, I'm going to kill everyone in this kindergarten room. And they take a 10-year-old or take the teacher hostage like this. So they're hiding behind the teacher. And they say, I'm going to shoot every one of these kids, but I got the teacher in front of me. And then they're like, let go of that teacher, let go of that teacher. Boom, one kid shot. Boom, second kid shot. Let go of the teacher. What do? Let go of the teacher until every kid is dead, and then they kill the teacher, and then you shoot this person? What are you doing? At some point, you're going to pray for temperance, for a steady hand, for wisdom, and you're going to shoot, trying to kill the terrorist. But if you kill the teacher, the innocent blood of that teacher is on the terrorist's hands.
That's right.
That's one scenario.
Yeah, that's right.
But the scenario that people seem to think of Israel is that you have the terrorist threatening 5-year-olds, or threatening the country, and then blows up the 4th grade room when there's nobody in the 4th grade room. That's the analogy. Saulo, right? Am I right or no? That's what you believe too. So I mean, this is the analogy. It's not the hostage situation where you have to. It's unfortunate, but it's on their hands. It's, hey, those 4th graders had nothing to do with the 5-year-old room where that terrorist was in. Why did you touch the 4th graders? I mean, I'm just trying to keep it super simple. Maybe I'm too much of a trial lawyer, but I'm trying to bring it down. That's do you agree that that's the discussion?
No, I think that's right.
Okay.
I think the way you've characterized it is correct. I think that it overly sanitizes the reality of the situation, though. I don't think you're trying to do that.
I'm trying to analyze
because I know where you're coming from. And just war traditionally was meant for uniformed fighting armies, and where they clearly identified themselves and they had regimens. The theater of war was well defined. This isn't the case with Islamic terrorism, and so you've got these human rats who are literally infesting civilian areas. And this isn't a bug; it's a feature of their strategy. And so this isn't occasional; it's routine. And so nothing's safe. Residences, clinics, hospitals, schools, places of worship, wherever. I mean, restaurants.
Isn't
to the
that
extent
easy to say that? You have to back that up.
No,
don't
but
you?
I mean, it's been backed up.
How do you back that up? If you destroy the place that you say, how do you back that up? Because this is a sincere question. Because I mean, look, I have an issue with Gaza looking like an ashtray. I mean, I just do. Me, as a Christ follower, and I am the furthest from some hippie flower that is anti-violence. You know, I'm pro-appropriate violence when it's in self-defense or defense of a third person, and be vicious, be harsh, be first, all that stuff. Because action beats reaction. I'm cool with all that. I understand combat. But when a place looks like an ashtray, and then you say, well, there was Hamas in every building, every building, and I think, well, there's tunnel systems. Well, you blowing the building up doesn't stop the tunnels because the tunnels are still working. I'm just really trying to be objective about this without taking us. I'm on the side of truth. I don't give a shit about. I'll criticize Israel constantly, or I'll defend them constantly, wherever the truth leads me. I want to make sure that's clear. But so I guess that's what I'm trying to understand. Because I hear the you know that we talk about this. I send the videos. Salo sends the videos. We see all this.
Okay.
This, and I know context is king. I deal with that for a living. So if anybody understands, that's me. But again, how do you prove that every building has this element in it? How do you go back and prove that? I mean, you can't go. It's not a crime scene because you don't have access to it.
Well, so shared intelligence. You're not getting intelligence from one place. You're getting you can discard it. I mean, that's fine. But then, okay, then how do we know anything? So in every discipline, there are accredited sources, there are trusted sources, and there are bullshit sources. Yeah. We do that with everything else. We can just dismiss it all and just say, well, we can't believe anything. But if I'm not picking Israeli intelligence, I'm not picking U.S. intelligence, although I defer to U.S. intelligence as an American citizen. Right. And some people would see that as an oxymoron. Maybe. We have European intelligence. This is the problem. Western leaders don't question the legitimacy of the intelligence. What they question is whether there should be any collateral damage in order to carry out their objectives. And I think that this is part of the problem. We have no stomach for that because we cast these judgments, and I'm going to throw myself into the mix, in air-conditioned rooms where there are no consequences to anything that I say. And the reality is that Israel, to pick on Israel, they're fighting a war in a thimble, an area the size of a thimble. This isn't an attack over 1 week. This has been going on, in my opinion, I've told you this from day one, way too effing long. In fact, this is the problem. Western leaders in Israel they're under a magnifying glass 24/7 by everyone. They can't actually conduct the war they would need to conduct the way I think should be conducted. Because the West has zero tolerance for collateral damage. And here's what happens in the long run. We have literally foreclosed our ability to minimize enemy casualties or to minimize population casualties because we've taken so effing long. And because we're trying to be so careful. And in the end, we're actually creating more collateral damage. I bet you there's more people that are dying. There's more IDF soldiers that have died. There's more people, civilians in Gaza, because we're trying to be sensitive to an impossible standard that actually handcuffs individuals in the theater of war. So, and there's tons of evidence for that. As wars carry on look what we did in Afghanistan. Why was it a failed initiative? Why in the hell did it take forever? We have thousands of dead people and thousands more maimed because the theater of war was bound by completely unrealistic requirements on our soldiers. To your point, they're warriors, Nico. They know what the rules of engagement are. Let them go. But this constant micromanagement, the constant media war, the idea that Instagram actually has anything intelligent to say about a 2-second decision in a theater war far away, completely disregarding 50 years of unprovoked assaults by the aggressor. I'm fascinated by it. I really am.
I'm saying let's start with the general principle. If any country is bombing non-combative structures or people, that would be inappropriate.
From a just war perspective, I want to be very clear about this because I hear a lot of bullshit on war crimes. A war crime doesn't mean that civilians die.
That's not. Yeah,
just to be clear. Just to be clear.
I agree.
So when Trump said he was going to blow apart a bridge deliberately, He's gonna blow apart a bridge. He's gonna blow apart utility facilities and all of that. Now, that is not a war crime either, because what he's decided, the decision that he's made,
He's not
is that those
intending
things
to hurt civilians.
right, brother. And so what?
I'm with
but
that.
everybody knows, and here's the problem. And you brought this up. Everybody, this is the uncomfortable tension. Everybody knows that that's going to lead potentially to the war, to the death of civilians. I mean, it's invariable. I mean, this is why everybody was like, and this is my point. Everybody led with that. The objectives of the war was secondary. Iranian evil didn't matter. Like this guy, with all due respect, had or not. Where is the consideration for the innocent that have been pillaged? Seriously, for decades by Iran. Where's the consideration? I mean, I'm stunned by it. No moral legitimacy. Okay, he can take the papacy and the authority that he hides behind, which, by the way, he's doing a horrible injustice to, and put it where the sun doesn't shine. Because this is manipulative. He's using Jesus, citing no scripture, of course. He's using Jesus to manipulate people to align with him on a political viewpoint that is frankly immoral. And so my point is, it's our tiptoeing around this fear, this obsession with avoiding collateral damage that's actually creating more evil, that's dragging out wars and leading to more pillaging. And that's what worries me. Israel should have finished what happened in Gaza. They should have finished that in 1/5 of the time. But they're still there because every time they take 2 steps or fart the wrong way, here come the 15 Instagram videos saying that it's Israel committing genocide. That's the reality of what's happening today.
Yeah,
Can't fight a war like that.
I don't believe they're committing genocide. But I mean, I think people have concerns if they're bombing non-combative targets. That's it. I started with a general premise. You went into a specific apologetic.
But non-combative
which is
targets,
fine.
when you say non-combatant targets,
Oh, sorry.
I just want to make sure.
Is that the right word? Combatant?
Yes, sir. Because non-combative means
Thank you,
there's,
Professor.
well,
I'm joking. I need that correction. Non-combatant targets.
I want to use your argument that you brought up a couple of weeks ago. You said these are the people who can kill someone within a gnat's ass of
Well, hold on. Let me give
So
my
why can't
argument.
they do it in Gaza?
Let me give my argument. Because everyone brags about how strong the Mossad is and this, IDF and Israel's capabilities, and they can blow people up with pagers, and they can take out Iranian leaders, not in apartment complexes, in an apartment, right? That's the specificity in the technology there.
Sure.
But then Gaza looks like an ashtray. I mean, those two things don't reconcile to me. You can't be great at what you do, warriors, and then yet October 7th, they didn't know that people were going to kind of pedal over in tricycles with parachutes and cross over for 6 hours. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. So, someone betrayed somewhere, and I'm not saying it's Bibi, like Saulo would say. I don't know, but he's in charge. And so Trump takes the heat for being in charge, and so should Bibi. So should any country. So should Zelensky for Ukraine and Putin for Russia. Overall, right? Because the buck stops with these people. I'm just saying, I'm looking for consistency, and that doesn't make sense to me. I think for me, what I posed to you was in a general, if any country, I didn't even mention Israel. I understand you went there because ultimately that's what people are talking about. If any country is targeting innocent people, meaning they're non-combatant, and if that's happening, obviously that would not be condoned biblically. Right? I mean, no matter who it is, whether it's us, Israel, or anybody else.
I'm just suggesting that proportionality in war
But answer the question first, right? Is that right? I mean, right? If that happened, I'm not saying it happened. I'm saying if that happened, that's not biblically justified.
Of course not. The intentional killing of civilians, period, is gross, and it's not allowable under the Geneva Convention. And I point out that we are not bound to the Geneva Convention. It just has been kind of a generally accepted, rules of conduct in wartime. But we are not bound by the Geneva Convention. Neither is Israel. They're not a signatory to that, to my knowledge. And neither are these, poor excuses for human beings that are launching barrages of missiles for the last 50 years at Israel and others of their neighbors. I just want to step back and say that when you consider what Gaza looks like, you have to consider that this isn't some sprawling, multi-state region. There's a reason why it's the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, I know, I agree with that. But
okay.
it looked a lot better than it does now, doesn't it?
I know, bud. I think I understand that. But I think that the problem is twofold. It's tiny. It's a protracted war that's taken too long. And so this is going to happen.
I guess
I don't know how you avoid that kind of collateral damage since October 7th. And there was wars before then in Gaza. But this has been going on now for a number of years. I don't know, at some point, being surgical is going to have very little positive impact. At some point, you're talking about a tiny area that's smaller than, I think smaller than New Jersey. So
yeah, but I guess for me as a Christian,
yeah,
I don't give a shit about the Geneva Convention. I care about Jesus's convention, right? And so Ephesians 4:26 says what? To be angry, but do not sin, but sin not. And so if we can just and if the position is, hey man, they have been attacking us for 47 years, they're all screwed. I remember I've said this for a long time.
But he's talking about a personal. You know that he's talking about a personal.
I understand that, but
relationship. He's not talking about a war.
It's still a principle, right? I mean, are you saying that in war you can sin?
They're not there because they're angry. They're there because.
But hold on. Are you saying that war is somehow nullifying us from any moral responsibility?
No.
Okay, well, that's all I'm saying. Then it's a principle. I'm not saying I know he's not talking about fighters and
hold on a
armies.
second. But morality in a personal relationship is different than morality. Morality is situational here. Morality in a personal relationship is not the same as morality in a field of war.
In morality in war or in a personal relationship, should innocent people be killed intentionally?
No.
Okay, well then
not intentionally.
Okay, got it. And I understand collaterally, and that happens.
Okay.
It's ugly. It's terrible. The example of the teacher and the 5-year-olds, it happens.
Okay, so where's the evidence that this is intentional?
I didn't say that. I'm talking principally. You're getting defensive. I'm saying
no,
principally.
I'm trying to defend a viewpoint.
Well, I'm not trying to even do that. I'm trying to start 30,000 feet and then work it down to Israel, work it down to the United States, because we're no angels.
But you positioned it as some people said this, so I'm defending against that.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to address what I know people are thinking out there. And I want to make sure that we're trying to defend a biblical worldview. Now, even though I don't think it's true anymore, the United States still claims to be a Christian nation, at least under this administration.
True enough.
Under Obama, it didn't. Over Biden, it didn't. But back under Trump, whether you like him or not, he's claiming back that this is a Christian nation, and he's made it public, right? It depends on who wins in 3 years, that'll change. But our history, and we're celebrating 250 years, and we'll probably do another show on this. This is in principle and ethic, and the ethos is a Christian ethos. It doesn't mean that you have to be mandated to be a Christian, but we claim in God we trust. It's not in Allah we trust. It's not in Buddha or Hare Krishna or anybody else. It's in God, Yahweh, we trust. And we've talked about that before. So to me, that bears responsibility. Now, I understand that war is different. To me, and I've seen it, in a Royal Rumble, it's different rules than in a boxing match. When you're fighting someone one-on-one versus 20 people and what the hell's going on, and you're throwing glass and glass is coming at you and you have a gun and knife, whatever, bat, shit's going to happen, man. That's just the way it goes. It's a different combat arena. But all I'm saying, I was just trying to say there's some principles that are interchangeable, right? I mean, innocent people shouldn't be targeted, and that's all I was saying. And so I said, if that's happening, no matter who's doing it, that's wrong, right? So now the next question is that happening? And of course, everybody wants to blame Israel.
Okay, but the rules of engagement themselves, whether it's the United States or Israel, the rules of engagement themselves are designed to spare civilian life. That's the point.
If they're being followed. The rules don't just apply themselves. People apply the rules.
Okay, every bit of evidence is that they're being followed.
You say that. I don't know that yet.
Is there any doubt to anybody listening that the United States could wipe out Iran in 5 minutes? No. So why hasn't the United States done that? Because we're not going here. We're not going there. We're trying to force as much as possible from the aggressor, as many concessions as possible, while limiting collateral damage.
I am not criticizing the United States right now.
Okay, Israel's the same way. Israel, and therein lies the problem. Because
no, it doesn't lie the problem.
No, hold on.
Because you're trusting to information. I'm just questioning. That's all. I think we should question. That's all I'm saying.
I know, but you listen.
And I'm
you
giving
share
deference,
with me. You share with me a lot of videos, and a lot of those videos are bullshit.
Okay,
not you.
No,
I know that you are.
Me bullshit. I don't care.
No. Hold on. You're sending. I want to be clear. I want to be. You send me videos that people sent you.
Right.
And you say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And we got into a discussion.
Right.
That's what I meant to say. I didn't meant to say you.
Well,
so I want to be clear on
what's...
but it matters.
No, I know, brother, but it doesn't bother me.
Well, if you were going to send a video to somebody and pitch a message, I know you, and you would check the veracity of that video.
Of course I would.
Okay, all right. So people are sending you videos, you're sending them to me. And in many cases, I say, well, the claim of the video is this. And I focus on the claim. I actually haven't even focused on the video itself. But on many occasions, I've said I question the veracity of the video. And the point is, and I sent a text today, a lot of the videos that are coming out of social media platforms have been identified by independent third parties who are not Jew lovers or America lovers as questionable. They originate in the Persian Gulf. They originate beyond our borders. These things are AI chopped up. And the reality is they're being used to pitch the message that Israel has no rules of engagement. It's expedient. It does whatever the hell it wants to do. It's in the middle of a genocide. It's committing genocide. It enjoys committing genocide. Yep. It can't kill enough Gazans. And then they send these videos where, like you said, Gaza looks like and I said to you, even though I question the veracity of the video, I'm trying to be as honest as I can. It makes sense to me that Gaza, as tiny as it is, after as much time as it's taken, that it looks like that. And my whole point was that it is precisely because Israel follows rules of engagement that it looks like that.
Your claim is the reason why it looks like that is because it's taken longer than it should have. And as the war changed and moved, I mean, if you have combatants in one building and you destroy that building, and they move to another building,
that's right.
you chase them after that
Reload,
building.
recharge.
So, but that's what you're saying.
I'm saying
that's
that
the claim,
those
right?
rules of engagement, which are designed to spare civilians, have led to greater death and injury among our soldiers and among soldiers, resulting, I think, in a lapse of our obligation to those troops. And yes, ultimately, ironically, to the population. Because that's what happens. Oh, ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. The West reaches its limit after 2 weeks. Lots of pressure. Ceasefire, ceasefire. In the meantime, like you said, they're reloading. They're moving. So then we go in again. Boom, there goes another building. 6 months later, hey, George, what's up with the pancakes? And on and on and on. And brother, I've said to you for a long time, this should have ended a long time ago. We've handcuffed these people, whether it's Israel or the United States. And the problem is ultimately that the West has no stomach. And I understand why. Because we don't want to see civilians lose their lives. But once a warrior, and you say this, once the sword is out of the sheath, the engagement's on. You let them fight their battle knowing that the rules of engagement are what they are. The rules of engagement are built in to spare civilians. It doesn't mean every civilian's going to be spared, but if you tell them how to fight a war, more people are going to die. And that's where we are today. And I don't like it. I think it's immoral. And the problem is, Nico, what we're seeing on Instagram and other platforms is that people are making horribly immoral arguments under the guise of morality.
No, I get that. Look, it's convenient.
So that's my sermon.
Look, well, no, I'm of the position. I want to make sure that we follow the truth, that we honor God in doing that. That we can boldly take a position on something and analyze it through a lens of a biblical understanding and what Christ expects of us. And look, I've given a lot of deference to Israel. I mean, they are this small strip of land surrounded by, in the past, hate, attacked multiple times attacked, them not initiating it, them actually taking land from, to the winner of the spoils go to the winner, whatever. And they've taken a lot. They had Egypt. They had a lot of Jordan. They had that. Israel should be what? I haven't looked at the map in a while.
No, you're right.
Like 4 times the size it is now, right? 4, maybe more. I don't know.
And dare I say, if you go to the biblical promises, it's a much larger.
But what I'm saying is Israel should be at least 4 times the size, 3, 4 times. I don't know what it is, but much bigger than it is.
You're talking about because of the borders of after 1967 or pre
48,
1967 borders.
Yes,
yeah.
I mean, they actually won conflict with Jordan and Egypt that initiated war. They win and they get the spoils. They had more land, but they gave it back with the desire for peace in these peace deals. They weren't kept, right? But they
originally acquired land in 1967. They ended up giving
it back. That's my point. Yeah. So the argument that they want to take over the Middle East, man, they're really shitty at it then because they would have at least triple the land they have now.
Sure.
And if they were on this campaign, they would keep on acquiring. And if they really hated people of the Islamic religion, they wouldn't even let them in their country. I mean,
and I would. I
want to be fair when I defend Israel when it's appropriate, because I'm a truth scavenger, which we're supposed to be if we're Christians. But I'm also will criticize Israel when it's appropriate, right? I mean, and so I just want to make sure that we're looking at this. I think people that send some of those videos, I worry about AI. I worry about stuff like that. I do, and that's why I ask questions. But I also worry about taking the word.
I sent you the source of that analysis. I'd appreciate you looking at it and see what you think. When Salo, for instance, sends me a video, he and I were talking before you walked in. He sends me a video saying a specific thing, making a specific claim. Mm-hmm. So we get embroiled on that topic. Because he said, hey, it seems like you're you don't have anything negative to say about Israel. I got plenty of things to say negative about Israel, but you got to allow me a discussion to have that. But if you send me a specific claim, I'll address a specific claim. And if you send me 10 bad claims, I'm going to, guess what? I'm going to call out 10 bad claims. If you want to have a philosophical discussion about Israel, where they've screwed up, where they're not doing well, I've got plenty of opinions on that too. But what we're seeing is very specific claims that are made that are wrong. They're just false. And so, again, I don't care who the claim is being made at, Nico, whether it's a person or a nation or government, whoever, you got to give credit where credit is due, and you need to defend the innocent. And I think that we need to agree on what it is that we're trying to avoid. You don't want to go in and kill innocent civilians. You don't want to use civilian populations either as shields, which is what Hezbollah does. And so we don't want to do that either. And so there's certain rules of engagement. And what I'm suggesting is that the rules of engagement that are being followed by the United States. They're being followed by Israel. Hezbollah has no rules of engagement. And that's why I don't understand. Why don't you go after the group that has no rules of engagement? They can do whatever they want. It is well documented that they use human beings as shields. We know that. When you have a missile launching station outside a clinic, I don't think it's hard to figure out that you're using a humanitarian facility as a shield. Where is Israel doing that?
Yeah, well, look, and
why doesn't
Israel
the Pope
needs to answer for October 7th first? To me, before we, the same time, at the same. All I'm saying, I'm just saying, I'm not. I'm not in the Mark Levine, Ben Shapiro camps. These people, those two idiots drive me nuts. Because so Israel, I don't have Israel derangement syndrome, but I don't have Israel euphoria either. And the same thing with Trump. Trump derangement syndrome, Trump euphoria. I'm a Trump realist. I'm an Israel realist. Why? Because everybody's flawed when you look at them through the lens of the scriptures. And so that's what I'm going to do when I analyze anybody's behavior.
So we started this by looking at the statement from Pope Leo. We can end on that. Why does Pope Leo not consider using his massive platform and calling out the injustice, the taking of human life over the years, which is well documented, tens and tens and tens of thousands of people in Iran? I don't understand it. How about a little even-handedness here, bud? This would be a great opportunity to call out that evil. Silence.
Yep.
Crickets. Why?
Let's go to some, we're going to wrap up. Let's go to some comments. So Stryker Crawford, I view Trump as a narcissistic butthead. She means asshole. That I'm very thankful he's my president. I can't disagree with that.
Okay.
I'm thankful he's the president too. Although I have a lot of criticism of him, but I think, it's him or Harris. Please. Stryker Crawford, God wouldn't have to, but would you blow up the bridge with the kids on it? I try to find another way. However, it's got to go. It's got to go. I think you make every attempt to make sure there's no kids on it. Now they're going to make kids on it. They're going to put kids on it. So there's my example again about who's doing that, who's putting those kids in harm's way.
Yeah.
When you're trying to make a strategic decision to end a war. Now if you're going to discuss with people, if people are going to take the position. I'll read that one in a second from Clay Michael. If you're going to take the position we should have started this war in the first place, that's a different discussion. So then we got to talk about that. That one, I think I'm very clear-eyed on that one. I have no issue with them taking out this regime because they're pure evil. I wish our country had more realists. Party over self-thought is what's destroying America. Yeah, realist, practical people, common sense folk. I agree, and people that are rooted and have a desire to, and I'm gonna use a biblical framework to do what's moral, and that's and there's a lot. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of different agencies and people and influences involved. There's just a lot. That's well, maybe we'll save that for the next discussion. But yeah, I agree. Look, this is. I'm glad we do these discussions. It's important. I think more people need to do it. You need to have questions. I just tell people you should never be afraid. Criticism of Israel should be on the table. Criticism of the United States should be on the table. You can criticize Israel and still support Israel. Bless Israel means to criticize them because you want them to do better. I bless my kids by criticizing them constructively and loving them and correcting them and rebuking them and then encouraging them and affirming them. That's all part of blessing my kids. I think people define bless Israel. Number one, some people don't think that applies today, and that's a different theological discussion. We can have it, on the show next time. but blessing includes correcting because you want them to do better. I mean, so blessed, some people think blessed means that you have to support everything they do. And this government isn't the government of the Genesis 12. And we get on to these theological debates, which we can. I think they're important to have. But in the end, I'm a Christ follower. So I'm going to look at things the way I think, studying God's word, Christ would look at it. And that means I'm not on the side of anybody. I'm on the side of Jesus, and that's the side of truth. Truth matters to God. It matters to us. It should matter to us. And if you look back to Proverbs 6:16, if you look at not only spilling innocent blood, God hates lies. He hates deception. He hates feet that are quick to run to evil. He hates strife, people that are planning strife. So that's, if God hates something, I'm going to hate what he hates. I'm going to love what he loves. And I'm going to hold sacred what he holds sacred, because he's not just my Savior, he's my Lord. So he gets to decide how I do life. That's kind of my general overview of anything political. I'm going to look at it through the lens.
And we've spent a lot of time on Israel, but maybe we ought to just end by focusing on our own history. It occurs to me, from the American Revolution to Abraham Lincoln's waging war on the South to dispense with a horrific convention called slavery. I mean, it was, and Lincoln said, I hear a lot of people talking about whether God's on our side. This guy says God's on his side. Another guy says God. And I'm not so much concerned about that as being on God's side.
Yeah.
That's what he said. I want to be on God's side.
That's right.
And then he ended by saying that at the end of the day, that the initiative to free the slaves was clearly on God's side. Again, preserving and protecting the innocent. And then you flip over, to 1941, in the aftermath of Pearl Harbor on December 7th, where we decided to get in the war, and you have FDR. And this is fast forward 3 years from that, June 6, 1944, the initiative at Normandy, and you've got FDR that's praying. He's praying, and he's asking God, yes, the God of the Bible, for blessing and to bless the initiative of the troops because it's a righteous war, and invoking the blessing of God. And so what ended up happening? Well, we ended up destroying a psycho tyrant who was wiping out human lives like they were nothing, not just in Germany, but to the tune of ultimately 8 million Jews and everybody in between who disagreed with his regime. So would somebody say he waged war? And so did everybody else that worked for him. So was that unchristian? Was that not noble? Was that immoral in some way? Would we opt for having a Hitler persist unopposed? That's crazy. I mean, especially when we later discovered that the mayhem and the death and destruction that happened under his watch. So we need to step back and just breathe and stop and think about, give this government, and considering Iran, try to look at it historically from that prism, and then try to fast forward 50 or 60 years from now and reflect back on this initiative. And then maybe you might come to a very different moral conclusion if you're impugning Trump. And then ultimately, you and I have gotten in this debate. Trump, people say he's narcissistic. I don't think he's narcissistic. I don't.
Oh my God.
Well, I mean, it's not what narcissism is. I'm sorry.
What's narcissism?
The idea,
define narcissism.
Well, I think he's.
That's a whole show. Why do you say that shit?
Because he's not narcissistic.
Why do you
he's
say
not.
that? What's
He is
narcissism?
he's self-centered.
Define it.
He's deeply self-centered.
Define narcissism.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
Self-centered.
2 minutes.
Self-centered is the idea of somebody who's hyper-focused on the things that they want. Period.
Okay.
And there's a gross kind of lack of self-awareness. But if you're narcissistic, you really have no empathy for others whatsoever. And there's zero evidence. In fact, there's every evidence to the contrary. Trump's got a lot of problems, but he doesn't lack empathy. Trump is deeply empathetic. There's story after story after story of Trump being moved.
So you're saying a narcissist is not empathetic?
Not empathetic at all.
Okay,
And that's
enough.
a big distinction. Now, I don't disagree that he's self-centered. I don't disagree any of that stuff.
Okay.
But we just, that word gets thrown out a lot. I think I don't know. Since we're talking about a man's character,
if lack of empathy is a definition of is in the definition
is
of
included in.
I agree that he has selective empathy. I agree with that. He does. I mean, but it's there.
That's right.
I mean, I'm a supporter. I voted for him, so I mean, I'm not anti-Trump. I mean, but I am also pro Jesus. So I mean, I'm not on anybody's. I'm on Jesus' side. Whoever is on side with Jesus, then I'm on side with them.
The empathy is a big distinction.
Yeah, but Kyle, brother Kyle, man, if I sent you all I'll start forwarding videos to you that people send me, and one of the people that sends me shit is right next to me, Salo. So I'll do a group text, and I'll send them to you. I don't speak of things I don't know, and so I ask questions, and I start with George. And I know where George comes from, and I know his mindset, but he's also, I think he does the best he can, wrapped in flesh like all of us, to be objective. He has that scientific approach, and so I respect that about him. So I know it's a good starting point for me. And then I do, I'll look into things, and I have questions, and I'm a critical thinker, and I push back a lot on stuff.
Sure you do.
But in the end, I'm a truth scavenger. That's it, man. And if anyone thinks that Trump or Israel or anybody, Charlie Kirk, with all due respect, I know he's with our Savior, I believe that, myself included, anyway, none of us is perfect. And so if you can't find any criticism of anybody you support, then you need to figure it out, because you're not supporting your Messiah.
Exactly right.
And so now if your position is, well, I don't want to criticize Israel or Trump because everybody else, that'll give them more permission, well, then that's more strategic. But I think you gain more credibility if you can objectively criticize from correction someone or something that you support. And
Yes.
so nobody is above correction. So if you can't correct somebody you're supporting, then you're not analyzing them enough, because nobody's perfect. Right?
That's a very, very fair statement.
All right, guys, thanks. I hope this is helpful. I mean, I guess we're gonna talk about something juicy next time. Oh, one more. Trump isn't a narcissist. Now we know you are trolling us. Trump is deeply empathetic. Ha ha ha. That was Clay Michael. Well, I don't know. I mean, if that's the definition, I'll look it up. We'll
Yeah,
talk about it.
dictionaries matter. I mean, when you're throwing words out and you're impugning someone's character, I don't care how much you like him or not. You don't like his orange hair. You don't like the way he talks. You don't like that he carries on for an hour about stuff. That's fine. But the idea that he's narcissistic, I mean, yeah, grab a dictionary.
Linda says, as we wrap up, totally off subject, but can y'all do a podcast one day soon on prayer rooms in public schools being created for Muslim students? I just heard a respond reel from some guy with Ari as his partial name responding to Glenn, ticked as heck. You can say hell on this show about these school Islam prayer rooms. Absolutely.
Big problem.
Not only we'll talk about that, we'll talk about Islam in general. We've talked about the Islamization of this country, and people better wake the hell up. I mean, wake the hell up. Grow a pair of balls, church. Quit being a bunch of wussies. And we need to educate ourselves about an ideology that is antithetical to a constitutional republic. That's just a fact. That's not a statement. That's a fact. It is a statement of fact, but I mean, it's not an opinion.
It's a statement filled with fact.
Yeah, I mean, and antithetical to Christian ideology. That is another fact. And we have evidence of that. A lot of evidence of it. So the idea that it's not going to apply here is bullshit. The only thing that stops it is a constitutional republic for now. And so people need to wake up. And
Historical and present evidence.
Oh, yeah. I think there should be a federal law that Sharia law is banned. Banned. Sharia courts, Sharia law, every state's doing that individually, but there should be a national law on that.
And there's a bill introduced by Chip Roy. You should get behind it.
Keep going, Chip, and do it. It's true. I'm telling you, just like the border was our greatest threat, Islamization of this country is our greatest threat right now.
Yep.
You don't believe me? Go study UK, study Europe, study a lot of these places. Look at Jordan, used to be a Christian nation. Look at Egypt, used to be a Christian nation. There's another one over there. Which other one? Syria.
do this.
Syria used to be a Christian. People's like, what? Jordan, Syria, and Egypt used to be Christian? Yes, they did. They used to be Christian nations, and now look where they're at. So don't think this.
You could do this all day long.
Don't think this country can't fall. And that's the goal, by the way. So, all right, guys, God bless you. Hope you had a wonderful Resurrection Week celebration. Have a blessed week. Bye-bye.